explain in Arabic, just ask, and I'll explain it again in Arabic. Okay, let's start. I think it's okay, before starting, how many here have been working with SSIS or have tried working with SSIS? Please raise your hands. Okay, only one. How many of you have working experience in development? Okay, this helps me in proceeding with this session. Okay, first of all, I'll introduce myself. My name is Nabeel Derhem. I am a SQL Server MVP. Most valuable professional. I work as a database architect and a solution architect, and I'm currently, lately I've been involved majorly with what we call BI projects, business intelligence projects. You can think of it as something like, also part of it is data mining, which you've probably been hearing about a lot. And an important part of business intelligence is what we call ETL. Does anybody know what ETL stands for? Extract, transform, load. So you take data from somewhere, you transform it, you change the format, and then you put it somewhere else. That's the load. Why do you do this? Imagine that you have like 20 systems all over the place, and you want to build reports that integrates between all these systems. How do I do it? Well, I can build, how many of you have programming? You know about programming? Okay, so mostly you guys are programmers, it'll be easy to understand. If somebody asks you to build a report that gives you data from multiple sources, you can build a report to do that, right? But you'll have to have multiple data connections, you need permissions on every data source, and whenever somebody changes the data in one of those systems, you need to change your report, right? Somebody adds a column, a table, stuff like that. So what most organizations or companies do, they simply take whatever data they want and they put it in a central location in a format that they like. Okay, that's called the data warehouse. Have you tried, since you are programmers, you've tried developing a data model for a database, right? Like this is something that's like a given. Now, we call these databases you work with OLTP. These are databases for inserts, updates, and searches. But the database I'm talking about, the central database, which we call the data warehouse, this is mainly for reading. So the design, the data model for it is completely different than what you worked with. If you tried looking at a data warehouse, the model is very different. Remember when you design, you look at the normalization, right? Now the thing is, in data warehouses, you look at denormalization, completely reverse kind of way for design. I'm not going to explain a lot about it, how you build data warehouses, but the point is, you have a central place where you can search for data without extensive knowledge about the data sources, right? About those systems somewhere. You just put data here. If something changes over there, you just change the way you pull the data. Remember what we just called it? ETL, right? So you change the way you extract the data and you just put it in a better way into the data warehouse. So ETL, what does this have? What does this session have to do with ETL? SSIS stands for SQL Server Integration Services. This is the ETL tool from Microsoft. Okay, so if you're planning on getting data from somewhere and ending up putting it in the data warehouse, or maybe even in different systems, other databases, then you need an ETL tool like SSIS. SSIS is one of the most used ETL tools around the world. There are others, and I'm not going to get into a debate which one is better than which. But since most people have knowledge about Microsoft, then it will be a good idea to just have a look at this model, because it'll be easier to just start with it. But the same concepts I'll be explaining here is available in all other ETL tools. Okay? So you can check others like Informatica, Minishu. There are other names that you might be working with. So the main point of this session is to introduce the ETL concepts, the main concepts that you have to work with, and I'll show you some very simple demos on how ETL works with SSIS, how to design what we call a package. What I'll be using is SQL Server 2012. So it's the latest version currently, and it's a little bit different than the previous versions, like in 2008 or 2005. So if you're using an older database version, the same concepts are there. You might just find different windows, a little different windows, but the concepts are the same. So this just explains a little what I just told you about. Now remember, extract, transform, load. Why do I transform? Because as I told you, the data model in the source database is different than the data model over here. So that's why, for example, I could take in the data source, you can imagine this in your system, you store the data as first name, middle name, and last name. In my data warehouse, for example, I store it as just name. So how do I combine all these three columns and put them into one column in this central data warehouse? That's transform. You might end up, in some cases, with just extract and load. You don't need to transform, right? You could just be copying the same data from here to the outside, and that's it. So it doesn't necessarily have to go through all these parts. Some people might, you might hear some terms, ELT. So they extract, they load, and then they transform. I hate using those terms. Just make it simple. It's always ETL. It doesn't matter which order you're using, which part you're taking out, it's just ETL. Okay? In some older version in SQL Server, I think in 2000, it used to be called DTS. That's what we call now SSIS. So if you ever read an article that says DTS, just close the page. It's very old. You don't need to read about it. So when I design an ETL, the complete thing is called, or the thing is called package. That's where you build your ETL process. Okay, remember, it could be reading data, changing data, and then just putting it on the destination, as we call it in SQL Server. I'm not going to go into details in here, because this is probably for people who know more about SSIS. How do I execute a package? So once you end up designing the package, you're supposed to execute it, right? I mean, one thing that you might be doing is simply scheduling. So I need this to work every day, right? And get the data from this side to the other side. So I'll be using what we call the SQL Server agent. That's part of SQL Server, just to schedule. You can think about agent as just a scheduler. There are other tools like command prompts. You can use Visual Studio, since you're very familiar with the .NET or the programming languages, then you can just use that. And there are new ways, more advanced ways. It depends on what you want to do with your package. Okay, before starting, I'll need to show you something, because I know that just talking doesn't show you anything. So right now, I just opened the SQL Server 2012 window. I want to show you a simple example on how to create a package without writing a single line of code. I can do that. This is SQL Server. So what I want to do, that's a simple example, is I'll go to this database, and as you can see here, I have only a couple of tables. Somebody came and told me that, okay, Nabeel, we have this table in an Access database. It's an Access. We need to put this table inside your database. So that's what we want to do, right? Extract, maybe transform and load. I can do this from within SQL Server by right-clicking here and simply choosing import. Okay, so that's a wizard, and just going through the wizard, I can just say, for example, okay, I'll use Access as a source. So this is the source where I'll be bringing the table from. I'll browse, and this is an Access database. Just click open, next. And where do you want to put the data after you're finished? So I'm going to put it in my own instance in SQL Server, which is just the name that I have. And I want to put it in this database. So I'm almost changing nothing. Tables? Yes, I just need to copy an entire table. Because you might want to copy only part of the table, or write a SQL statement that gathers data from multiple tables. But in my example, I'll just copy from a table. So, for example, I'll choose the orders. And notice here, this is the source and this is the destination, right? There's an interesting part where I can actually edit the mapping. So I can change the name of the column, for example, from order ID in the source into something else. This is transform, right? So this is the transform part. I can change this stuff. You can get more advanced and go and click on the Edit SQL button, where you can do more advanced stuff with the transform part. But I won't. I'll just simply copy the same table into my database. I'll click next, and I'm done. It asks me, okay, so do you want to run this only once, or do you want me to save this as a package so you can reuse it as an ETL thing, like every day or every month or so? So I'll ask him, please, I'll ask SQL Server to please save this package as a file somewhere. It's telling me that it's going to save this into documents. That's fine. Not sure. Yeah, I'll overwrite this. There's a file already there. So I'll click finish, and right now it's running the same process that I just did, and it copied like 830 rows. Now, a question. Can I do this with .NET or my programming language? Of course. I can, right? I can simply just write, depending on the way you write it, like using a data reader, using a data set, using whatever tool you might be using as an ORM, and just take the data and insert it into that table. But the thing is, by the way, I could also write this as a SQL statement that does the same thing. What is the advantage of doing it this way? This is what I'm going to show you in the next part. So now I have a package that is saved somewhere, and just to be sure, I'll refresh this, and yes, the table is over here. Okay, the table is called orders. So this is just the beginning. I'll show you much more. Let's start something simple. See, I'm opening Visual Studio. I have an older version here. I didn't update it on this laptop. It's Visual Studio 2010. But in 2012, it's the same thing. You can start a new project with the type Integration Services project. There's a template that you can use for working with SSIS. If you're using older versions, if you're not using SQL Server 2012, then you'll have to use a tool called BIDS. It's with SQL Server. Business Intelligence Developer something. I forgot the other part. But the thing is, in and 12, and with Visual Studio now, you can just simply create it from Visual Studio. So this will make your life a lot easier, right? You're more familiar with Visual Studio than with other tools. So what I'll try doing is I'll create a new project. Again, it's a simple project with the type Business Intelligence, and I'll just click OK. And this is what it looks like. You can see the toolbox on the left side. You can see the Solution Explorer, so it looks familiar. This is what I call the packet, right? So remember, when I right now ran the ETL part, I simply saved it, right? I chose to save it. So let's look. I'll try adding the package here. See, I can say add existing package, and I know it's in Documents. Yes, it's new package, that's the name. And I'll just add it to this project. Double click over here. And now I start seeing some interesting stuff. I mean, this is what the package looks like. Okay, now, first thing you'll notice is there are multiple tabs up here. You can use these. And I'll explain about each one just very quickly so you can get a quick start. But let me just go through the slides quickly. So, you can see the first one over here is called Control Flow, right? The other one is called Data Flow. These two are the most important tabs. Most likely you'll be working with these much more than the rest. And it's actually the data flow that you'll be working with the most. So what are these? So this is again, so you double click on a package and everything that is related to the package can be accessed from these tabs. Is it clear so far? Okay. So control flows, data flows, and some other tabs. Okay, I don't want to go through, this might be somewhat complicated, so again I think I'll just show it in Visual Studio where it's easier. So this is the control flow. You can see here that I have multiple controls that I can add, right? So a good example, a very simple example, is I can send an email here. So what you can do, you can simply just drag this, drop it, and double click somewhere or and you have a properties window where you can configure it. So if you want to send someone an email, just use this control, configure it with the right properties, and it will send an email for you. So this is the first reason for using SSIS. If you're writing your own .NET code or SQL code, is it easy for someone else to modify your code? It's usually not, right? When they read your code, like, okay, so what is he doing here? You have to have, if you're documenting it really well, then yes, they could help you, they could do this easily. But usually it's not. While using SSIS, it's a graphical tool, right? Anybody can simply just look at it and say, oh, so he's sending an email in case something wrong happens. For example, you want to send an email once you finish the package, right? Or it might be something, wrong, like the package failed. I couldn't access the database, so I want to send a message. So it's pretty easy for people to just work with graphical interfaces. So that's one of the main reasons for using SSIS. It's an easily identifiable, entity that you can schedule. You can call, by the way, you can call packages from your .NET code, for example. You can call it from SQL Server, you can call it from the command prompt. So it's easy just to work with it this way, and it's easy to understand how to work with it. Plus, in every single case I've worked with, if you're transforming data, SSIS will always be faster than your code. Because it's a tool built for this kind of task, okay? So if you're just copying 800 rows, it won't make a difference. It could make sense to just create a stored procedure or create something in your code and you just call it and it does the process. But if you're talking about millions of rows, then it's a different story, right? It takes a very long time from your code. And remember, users are still accessing your, let's say, website, right? So you're affecting the performance when you're doing this kind of operation. This is a totally separate tool that just works with this. Okay, so usually the first thing that points you that no, I should use this SSIS is if you want something separate. It's going to be a lot easier to schedule it and maintain this and work with it without affecting my actual code. If you're just doing it for simple tasks, then yes, if you just do it by your code, it won't make a big difference. Okay, so I'll delete this one right now. So right now in this package, I choose to work with this package first because you all saw what it did. It just copied the table, right? That's it. So I have here two tasks. First is called preparation, and then a data flow task. Let's see what's in this preparation. A lot of code, and then this. What is this? You're simply creating a table, right? So what you're doing is you're creating a table on your database. You're connecting to the database, and you're saying, create a table with these columns. That's what the wizard did for you. But the table should be empty, right? You're just creating a table. So the next step would be to simply copy the table from the source to the destination. Now, notice the interesting thing. If I double click here, do you see? I'm right now in the second tab. So this is a tab that is just for the data stuff. Whenever you have something to do with data, it always fits there. And you can see that it has its own controls, right? It's different. It's not the same thing in the toolbox. Just getting back here quickly. So you have a lot of other things that you can do here. For example, you can see this for loop. I can actually repeat a task 10 times or 20 times. You just drag it, and it's like a place you hold things in. So it's something like this. You can actually drag these inside and compare it on a loop. It's really, the thing that most people notice about SSIS, it's really easy to develop. It's just the ideas. Work with the ideas. So the most important one is this. This is where you actually copy the data. I'll get back here. What I have only, so the source, this is the access file, right? So in access, I'll access it, and then I'll copy some data into my SQL Server database over here. You can see the connections are identified here. So for example, if somebody changes the location of the access file, what I need to do is double click and change the properties over here. Okay, so this is where you configure your databases. And this is, of course, my SQL Server one. This, on the other side, on the other hand, is if you want to transform, it's going to be in the arrow. Okay, if you want to change something, it's probably going to be here. But I didn't, so there's nothing to change over here. Okay, so before I move to the next, because these two are the most important, is there any question about these two? I think it's easy enough, right? Trying to make it as simple as possible. So, going back to the slides, so the control flow is always the most important, of course, or the most used. This is where you always stop. But the most important is actually the data flow. This is where you do the actual work. So you can see here, these are the most important ones, of course, data flow, and execute SQL tasks, like the create table I just showed you. And these are the rest over here. And you can see, by the way, that there is a path for web services. You can call a web service. And by the way, you can call your .NET code. If you have some library, you can call it from SSIS. So it's completely flexible, okay, with you if you want. This is a good example also. You can see here that I used some control to group all of these together. So what I'm doing is I'm getting some parameters from somewhere. For example, before running the package, you saw that I'm reading from an access file, right? And I told you maybe the access file will change, the location will change. So I might want to put this as a parameter. So I'll just send it. Yes.
The SSIS toolbox is part of .NET.
Yes, it's in the .NET. That's a course for this version of 2012. For SQL, yeah, if you're working with Visual Studio 2010 or 2012.
2010, Visual Studio 2010.
Yes.
It's part of it, right?
Yes. It is actually configured to use the assemblies of SSIS very easily. So, remember what I just told you. So if I want to pass the actual location of the file as a parameter, so if it changes, I'll just send it with a different parameter from my .NET code or whatever, or command prompt. I can do this in a task, and based on that, I can do the ETL. And you can see here the green arrows tell me that everything is fine. So I'm trying to run, I'm loading, for example, 2 million records. What happens if you fail in record number 90,000? What happens usually is, this is built in SSIS, you don't stop and fail, right? You can configure it so that it tells you that I stopped at this record, all of these records are here, and I can put the rejected record somewhere else. You could fail. If that's okay with you, you could fail. Or you could just tell it that I moved part of it, the rest I can run it again to make things go faster. You don't want to repeat all of the same process again. So for example, this will write everything to some file. I'll send the message. For a condition, you can configure some conditions. When do you want to send a message? And for failure, for example, call another package, which will do some other stuff to fix the problem. Okay? So you can see that it can get, by the way, it can get really complex. Some packages, but it's certainly much easier than your normal SQL code or application code. This is containers, tasks, and we call these constraints. You know, things that decide what to do, like the arrows. Data flow, that's what I just showed you. And here's where you do the actual ETL work. And it looks like this. So get data, do some sampling. This is a good example. We call the arrows here data path. And you just export it in the end to a text file. Right now, what I'm showing you is a ready-made package. But to make it also, to make you understand how to work this in an easier way, I'll try building a package with you. A very simple package that you can just do anytime. Before that, yeah, let's get this out of the way. This is, since you guys are developers, this will make a lot of sense for you. So there's something here called parameters. As I told you, you create this only if you want to pass variables. Like for example, I need to export or to get only 20,000 records. Or for example, get all data before this date. So this date has to be passed, right? So this is where you configure it. I'm not going to go into it. Just know that it's about parameters. Event handlers. This is really simple. Just by looking at it, I think you can guess what it does. See over here, it's telling you for new package, if an error happens. Remember, you guys are dealing with events all the time. in your application code. So you can configure, like for example, if something happens, in the case like a task fails or something, what I can do is simply what? Create an actual flow. So for example, I can say, please, if something happens in this package, in case of an error, again, send an email, do some stuff, do a loop, try doing it again. So you can configure responses based on events. You just drag and you build another flow completely over here. Again, I'm not going to build it, I'll make things simple. The last one is the easiest for everyone. This is called the Package Explorer. I don't think you'll have any problems with this. Right now, in this package, how many controls did you see? I think you saw only 2 or 3. Right? It's simple. I can just follow quickly and easily which ones. But imagine a control flow or data flow with, and I've worked with this, with hundreds of tasks. So you go over here and then you do this, and the rows with this condition, I'll give you an example. Go through the 2 million records and see which records had the flag deleted or is older than 2 years. Those older than 2 years, you want to process them in a separate place. So you're going to copy them into this table. These, you copy them into another table. And then you'll start working with this and have its own workflow. And this one, their own workflow. It's going to get very complicated and you won't be able to reach easily which control you're looking for. When you reach that, it's exactly like in Windows. When you get too many files, what do? You use Windows Explorer, right? Order the files and look for them. It's the same thing exactly over here. You go through the Package Explorer and you just start expanding things over here. So for example, as you can see here, I have a data flow and I have a preparation SQL. And if you open this, you can have event handlers for each one. You can have variables and so on. Data flow, you can get into also more details. See, this is the source inside it and the destination. So it's pretty easy to arrange stuff and see it clearly by doing it this way. As you can see, parameters are also over here. So everything in the tab over here, the component, you can just access them from here. Only if it gets too complicated. If not, you won't be using it. Yes.
We can add multiple sources, right?
Yes.
Okay, and with what sources type supported?
Everything you can imagine. Everything is there because this is an ETL tool. You could be reading from a text file, Excel file, Access, anything that could be a data source. You can just work with it.
To enforce that specific type of delimiters in binary files, for example?
They help you, SQL Server or SSIS helps you with the normal stuff, like for example, comma delimited, tab delimited. If it's something different, which I have faced, then you have to configure it within the SSIS. It is possible. It's just not as easy. It helps you with the easy stuff. If it gets too complicated, because for example, it could be, I've seen parts where the actual condition between a row and the next changes depending on the data in that row. And it gets really complicated. And you can do this. Sometimes the only way to do it right is within a .NET library.
Yeah.
But again, you can just call this library from SSIS.
So what's the code behind these?
The code?
Code behind.
Code behind this, it's in the engine, the SSIS engine. You don't need to worry about it. It's an engine optimized for this kind of data. But of course, if you're using the delimited and some stuff, it's built internally with the C++ plus .NET code, .NET libraries and assemblies.
Can you show us any example to call this package from a .NET code? Something like this.
I don't think I can show it in here. If when I finish this, I can just show you this, and it's really simple. It's really simple. If you just do it, you'll find. By the way, guys, if nobody hears a question right, please remind me. I always forget that. I should repeat the question before answering. Okay? So showing you, now I showed you all of this. This is for the event handlers. This is for the package explorer. And this step, you didn't see it. You will only see this one when you are running the package from Visual Studio. This tells you what was happening. Okay, so for example, it tells you, okay, I tried executing this and that, and this is the pipeline, and I'm copying 50%, 100%. It tells you what's happening. If there's a problem, there's an error, it will tell you here what the error was so you can debug it. And I'll show you this in a moment. Sure. So, let me show you a simple example of creating a package so you can get more familiar with it. I can, this is control. My example is going to be simple. I'm going to copy the data in the same table, orders, or another table, and I want to export it into Excel. Okay? Simple enough, right? Just export it to Excel. It could be text file, delimited or not, it depends. So I'll just drag a data flow task, and I'll just double click. It's going to take me to the next window, which is the data flow. So what do I want to do? Copy from SQL Server into Excel, right? Simple enough. I can look for it over here and work with it. See, here you have sources, and I can just expand this and look for the source that I'm usually working with. I'm going to make this easier for you guys. This is only in 2012. There's something called the source assistant. It helps you through something like a wizard. Drag. What was my source again? SQL Server, right? So I'm going to copy a table from SQL Server into Excel. Okay, which SQL Server? I think I remember the name of my instance. It's RC0. Which database are you working with? This database. This is the database I'm going to copy from. Test. Yes, it's connecting. Click OK. And it's ready. But I didn't specify the table. And this is what the error is about. See, if you just hover over it, it tells you that you need to tell me what the table is. So again, I'll double click. And I'll choose a table from here. If you want to write a SQL statement, change this into SQL command. And let me give you a small tip. If I want to copy only 4 columns and the table is like 10, which is better, the table or the SQL command? SQL command. Why is that? Because instead of loading the entire table, you're loading only a small part of it. This is one of the most important things that I've seen many people mistreat, is that they always copy the entire table and then they start working with it. This is wrong. What you should do is only get from the source the data that you exactly need. Yes?
I can have 2 tables there, right?
Yes, you can join them. You can have them each one as a separate source, and you can join them within SSIS.
But this is, you require the SQL statement, not selecting the table format?
Well, this is what I'm saying. If you want to do it here from 2 tables, you have to write a SQL with an inner join. But you can have this as a source, and you can create another source. And you can join them in SSIS. It's possible. I would prefer to use the SQL. It's faster. Again, because you're loading much more data than what you actually need. Okay, so I'll choose a table in this case. And I'll choose the same table, the orders table that we just worked with. Can preview. So this is the data. This is like sample of the data that you worked with. As you can see, first 200 rows. And I'll click OK. So this is the source. What about the destination? Again, just I'll drag drag it somewhere here. So I want to put it in an Excel file. Where do you want to put this Excel file? I'll put it in documents, that's fine. I'll call it whatever. Excel 11. And you can see that I'm specifying. I need the column names in the first row in this Excel file. Click OK. Again, I didn't specify where to put it in Excel. Wait a second. Yeah, I have to. Okay, I'll connect it first and then do this. So what I'm going to do is drag and connect. So I'm telling it, please put the data over here and into this place. If I double click now, where do you want to put it? I have nothing so far in this Excel file, so I'm telling it, please create a new sheet in Excel that I'm going to put this in. And as you can see, SSIS was smart enough to know what I'm going to do. So you're copying from the source, I know what columns you're trying to work with. It's telling me, this is probably going to be the column names. If it's wrong, you can just change it. So I'll click OK. OK, and I'll choose the worksheet over here. See over here? Mapping. If I click on this, it's telling me. So I'm going to copy the order ID. I'm going to put it the same name, order ID. Do you have a problem with that? If you do, you can change these. You can change the data types. You can, combine columns into one column. Do whatever changes that you might need to do. Just click OK, and things are looking good so far. So what I'm trying to do, what I'll be trying to do right now is right click on the package and let's see if it will execute, if it will run fine. Click execute. And tell me there's something wrong over here. And remember what I just showed you, the progress for the execution? I'll go over here and I think I have a problem with the data source. Oh, I forgot. That's an issue with the table I just chose. I'll stop it. Okay, it's telling me that I can acquire. I don't want to get you into this kind of details, but to make it simple, I'll delete those again. Do them again from scratch with an easier table that I know. So source, the problem is, it has to do with the table in orders is not does not have accurate data. I just copied it and so I'll use the same connection. Yep, same connection. Click OK, and again I'll double click. I'll choose the table this time to be this orders. Products, let's go with products. Let me just see the data. It's easy data. Click OK. Again, drag the destination. I'm going to put it in, let me put it in a new Excel file because that one was created already. So, E12. Open. Okay, and right now I'm going to connect those together. Double click, again create a new and put it here. Click OK, let's hope this time it runs fine. Oops, no, there's still some part that is missing. Yeah, I had to go to the mappings, remember? So I'm mapping those together. OK. I click execute package. Let's see what happens this time. Still not running. There's a saying in SQL Server that you should never do demos without them being prepared. So I think I have actually one, if I remember. The entire package is damaged now. Let me just try adding No, I think I overcopied it. Somewhere. It has to do with an acquired connection to the SQL database. Let's see if I have the other copy of the file. Not sure if this is working. Let me just test. It's supposed to be this. Ah, no, it's doing something else. Sorry, I won't be wasting more time with this. I think I did it yesterday. It should have run, but I'm going to show you something here. It should have ended up with something like this. I think. I'm not sure if I had the table. This is something that I did yesterday. It should have ended up with something like this. The problem has to do with the source of the table. I don't. How much time do I have? 5 minutes? I'll skip it. I'll need to skip it. You'll have to believe me. It works. Okay? And it should end up with something like this. As a file of Excel, and you can just work with it. Again, the problem has to do with the format of the table. I didn't check it. Now, let me show you some stuff about what just happened. This is the nice thing. Remember this package? Oops, wait a second. If I run this again. Yeah, this is the old package, remember? It's giving an error if I run it again. Can anyone guess why is this not running? See the progress? Because I want to show you errors in an easy way, easier than the one I just saw. If you go here, it tells you that it started on this time, it's validating, it's doing some stuff. What do you think, before I show you this, what do you think the problem is with running the same package? Remember when we copied from Access to the SQL Server? When I run this again, it always gives an error. What do you think the reason is?
It does already exist, I think.
Exactly. The problem is in this task. Remember, this task creates the table. So if the table is already there, it will give you an error. If you go here to the progress bar, it's actually telling you that. It's telling you creating the table failed because the table was already there. Okay, so what I have to do is go and delete the table, and it will run.
I have to do it manually, right?
This is a good question. Do I have to do this manually? What do you guys think? I can simply build another task that checks before. If the table is there, please drop it. Or I can simply say in the same task, if the table is not there, then create it. If it's there, just leave it. And what's going to happen, of course, it's going to add to the same table, so you'll have duplicated records. Right? So that's a problem. How do I deal with this problem? You have to deal with what we call incremental load. So you only load data that is missing. Right? This is, see, you're getting more advanced now with the SSIS thing or the ETL part. Incremental loading is an important part because I don't want to load 2 million rows a day. Right? I'm loading 2 million. Tomorrow it's going to be 2,100,000. I want to load only the 100,000. Okay? You have to build it in separate ways for that. So, again, progress can help you identify what's happening here. And usually, this is really simple. This is really basic stuff. So it gets more complicated than that when you work more with it. Now, you might not believe this. ETL has its own position. Your name could be an ETL developer. And what might surprise you is that on average, ETL developers get 30% more than developers. You might think that it's easier, it looks easier, but you're dealing with data, and data is everything these days, right? So you might want to consider learning more about ETL. It works well with developers. I've seen many developers convert into ETL developers, and it paid off really well for them. Because you're moving into BI. The next step will be BI software, which again will increase your average salary, and you can end up as a data scientist, which is the new buzz these days. everyone is convinced that this is going to be the most paid kind of position during the next decade. So this is going to take you into a step of that. So think about it. Take this as a start, and believe me, you should pay more. I'm not telling you use SQL Server, use SSIS. Although SSIS is a very powerful software, is a very powerful tool, and it's competing with the best. Right now, I think it has the second best speed, I think it was loading, the record was loading 1 terabyte in 30 minutes.
What is the first?
The first is the second at that time. The first was SSIS. The second was Informatica with Oracle. And the surprise is the tool who won the first right now. I can't even remember its name. It's a new tool. And it's very difficult to configure it. But it's just a small company. There's a lot of new ETL software running over there, and I'm not mistaken, it might be Avalanche, I'm not sure. Okay, you could look it up, the best record for. But anyway, it's one of the best. Okay, and if you have .NET knowledge or SQL knowledge, this is probably the best way to start, because when you go to other tools, you might have to learn a lot of things before getting more proficient with it. Oops, I think this started from the beginning. Okay, I think I'm almost done. So we tried building a package, and it ran really well. I've seen packages, for example, why you're copying data in 8 hours, for example, and somebody might ask people like me to come and take a look, and I might change it from 8 hours to something like half an hour, which gets you, telecom companies, they do this all the time. A lot of their work is ETL. Can you imagine how many records do they have per day? Every call you make, can you imagine how many calls a day do they record? The database cannot handle this. So what they do is they transform this into a data warehouse so the database can continue to function. So performance is everything when you get to that level. These are some resources that you can start with. I'm going to share this. Probably it's going to be on the website, right? The DevLifeStyle website. You can download it and try and start using these links. Okay. So again, I think we've covered the parts. ETL, we know about the concepts. We saw some examples about SSIS. And I didn't talk about most of the new features in 2012 since this is a beginning or a beginner session. So anybody has a question? I'm already out of time, so if you have any question, we could just talk after the session. Okay, thank you very much, everyone.